IVM.
This podcast is brought to you by India Water Portal, a globally visited website dedicated exclusively to stories, knowledge, information, and news on rural and urban water in India. Hello and welcome to Voices for Water. My guest today is Dr. Anju Gaur. Anju is a senior water resources management specialist in World Bank's India office. She's a PhD with more than 25 years of experience in the water resources sector. Currently, she leads the National Hydrology Project, where she is managing water resources and irrigation projects that are aimed at integrated planning in a sustainable manner. Anju is one of the greatest minds when it comes to data around water in India. She specializes in modernizing water resources information systems, forecasting, and the use of remote sensing systems for impact assessment and advanced planning. I spoke to Anju about the state of data around water in India and the extraordinary strides India has made in unifying these different data sources. Welcome to Voices for Water, Dr. Gaur. How are you doing and where are you talking to us from?
Good evening, Karthik. I'm Anju. I'm calling from Delhi itself, and good to talk to you.
Yeah, Delhi's suddenly become very warm, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. As you can see that. Yeah.
The winter was going fine, and then suddenly one day I just woke up to end of winter. I live in Delhi myself.
Okay.
Yeah. And you come from a world of a lot of data, especially when it comes to water resources data and forecasting, etc. I wanted to start the episode by asking you, how is the water data landscape in India, in your opinion? And what is the kind of data that is available to citizens and planners today?
Thank you, Karthik. Very good question. And you're right. Being past in my life as a researcher, I have been, of course, earlier was the user of the data, and now I have been very fortunate to be part of generation of the data. And if you talk in terms of a landscape, we could categorize in different categories. So first, of course, we are talking in terms of a source of the water or water use. This is one dimension we could think of. If we talk administratively, as we know, center, of course, is administrating the data, and then states are having their own, because water is a state subject. So as we know, water is a state subject. So the water belongs to central as well as the state. And so then when we talk of, as I said, one is water supply, second is water use, then administratively center and the state. Then if you talk in terms of how it is being collected, then also now there are various resources. One you go for in the field, collecting from the different, in situ or from the generators. Now, second dimension which has come is remote sensing. It is really path-breaking because it's introducing lots of transparency when we talk of data as the means of the transparency. So this is really adding further value, and I will share how remote sensing has really kind of broken those ways. And then coming to the another dimension is multidisciplinary, as we know. So the water does not belong to only water departments. Water is being used by agriculture, water is used by industries, hydropower, whatever, we call. So even they are also generating some sort of the data which would supplement to the information. So this is how I think I could describe the water landscape when you talk how we see that data.
You mentioned remote sensing and how that has changed things. Has that been a bit of a game changer? Can you explain to us how after remote sensing we have better data?
See, I'll just give one quick example on the water bodies. Recently, I'm going through. So we have these tank projects, and with the remote sensing now, in fact, here the big players are coming up. Google, other systems. So Google is giving you free imageries, 10-meter resolution every 5 days. So you can map your water bodies, how they are behaving in terms of a water spread. So we were able to map how is the water available in those tanks. So this is guiding us really big investments, whether which tank I should be prioritizing, which tank has how much water in terms of that. So even without going anywhere, I'm able to process the water availability in those water bodies. So such that way, as I said, because the high resolution imageries, 10 meters is a pretty good in order to start with. And every 5 days, it's you can imagine. But of course, even the paid imagery is now available on 1 meter resolution every day. So you can imagine again, like people are using how the landscape is changing. In fact, eventually, this remote sensing is going to come even with the river flows. I mean, there are already monitoring in some sites. So that way, as we say, daily imageries are already there. So it can contribute to your agriculture performance, water performance. Even people are using where the land encroachments are there on the water bodies, anywhere, basically. So this is how the remote sensing is a big game changer.
It's amazing, isn't it? As a layman, I'm just thinking, how did experts like you sort of do this before, Google and all these technologies became available at the tip of our hands? Talking about data, right? I come from a world of advertising where data is only as good as the people who are using it. I'm assuming that is the case in most areas as well. Today, let's assume I'm the manager in an RWA, or I'm a planner in a municipal corporation. What kind of data would I need? And where can I find it? And how easy or difficult is it for me to find this data?
Good questions. I think again, I guess yeah. I don't live in a society, but I can imagine. I was asking, frankly, some of the questions, my colleagues. So I understand. First thing to everybody's mind would come is quality and the quantity. I mean, both the things. How much water is available through the municipality suppliers, see as a IWA, and do I need to find a additional source of the water? So this is where, of course, then they may look for groundwater, which means then I should know where, how much, and the quality again of that groundwater. So this is, I believe, one dimension one would look for. The second dimension, I believe he would be interested the quality in order to design or supplement for the water treatment plant. So these data broadly are already available on India WRIS website for entire India, which is basically collected by Central Pollution Control Board and other central agencies. And even it is collating all the data from the states as well. So that granularity is going to come even sooner. And once the data is made accessible, which this National Water Informatics Center under Ministry of Jal Shakti is planning to, I mean, they already are giving, but I'm sure it will be more accessible so that you could generate, even develop your mobile applications. And as we know, technology, especially mobile apps, they have become very easy to develop. So I'm sure things are really going to be very easy in time to come.
Right. You enlisted some of the things that the government is doing in sort of enriching this data. Do let us know if there are more initiatives taken by the government. But more importantly, what is the role of a citizen in enriching this data? Right? Can they participate in this process?
I frankly envision a lot of times, because when we see the developed world, crowdsourcing has become one of the major source of the data. Actually, they send the photographs. It's both ways, because they are getting some services. So sometimes, of course, they will send, okay, this is what I'm finding it, as opposed to other things. So here also, in fact, government, again, National Water Informatics Center has started working on, especially on mapping these water recharge structures, water bodies. So they have made a mobile app, which they initially, I think they are looking for civil societies to help on, or any other organizations who have already collected those information. So different sources of the information. But this crowdsourcing, of course, has a big potential, and but work to be done, to be frank. We have seen even National Remote Sensing Center visioning the same thing, because for remote sensing also validation of the data is needed. So they also keep saying, when they are working with panchayats for different schemes, so they also share that we are envisaging to have a crowdsourcing information. Coming back to, again, groundwater, big potential, because that is belongs to the citizens, and that we have been actually talking about, how exactly it could be both give and take, as you said earlier, for the RWA. So it means if the government could give information in terms of a service to the citizens, and then I'm sure in return citizen could give what he has about his well or other information. I always keep giving, again, please don't call me Google fanatic, but Google traffic. We give our information about the location, which we would not give even to our parents, but we give it to Google because I get the traffic information. So this is how we have been trying to work with the government, that let's provide the services so that citizens or any other stakeholders are able to give the information and further supplement it.
That's an amazing situation, isn't it? And I think that that's the best example of crowdsourcing, isn't it? You give your data so that you can, you're invested in the larger picture. But talking about larger picture, right? You spoke first about what the government is doing, and then you spoke about, how individuals, citizens can sort of contribute, and of course, what large organizations like Google and others are doing. And then, of course, there are missions like the Jal Jeevan mission, which is collecting a large amount of data. And I'm thinking, a lot of this data is very granular, in its nature. You also mentioned how data is coming from things like entities like the Gram Panchayats. But we live in a world of dashboards, isn't it? We live in a world of, unified sort of a data. Is there a possibility to integrate all of these data sources together and start looking at the big picture for decision making? What would it take to get to that level?
We are almost there. So I think from the bank point of view, I could say, with Ministry of Jal Shakti, we have been working exactly on the same aspect for last 30 years. I mean, standardization of the data, because if you need to integrate the data, as I told you earlier, in terms of a landscape, central versus state. So if we have to integrate the data from different sources, of course, they should be in the standard format. They should be in a scalable format. So this is what we have been working with them. And I mean, it's already in the shape. And like today, as we speak, almost for 100,000 stations, they have integrated data across the country, be it for river, be it for groundwater, or reservoirs and all. So those kind of information is there, and it's basically continuing to grow. So as I said, first they are targeting their own government departments, then of course they will spread to other NGOs and whosoever the data generating agencies are. So this is the plan. But again, thanks to the technology, now standardization is also not that difficult, because there are different means you can really integrate the data. So in that term, the challenges are reducing as long as you have the data to be in a digital format. So as I said, in these projects, we are working with them. You digitize your data, you standardize your data, you bring this data on one platform. And the way the center, which is established by Ministry of Jal Shakti just a few years ago, National Water Informatics Center, they exactly have that mandate, that they collate the data, they integrate the data, and of course, they prepare those dashboards, analytics. And again, you are spot on, because what I have seen, not only water data, any data, when we go to Indian websites, you will see pool of data. But what does this data mean? We don't know.
Yeah.
So this is exactly, you're right. Recently, even yesterday, I was sitting at the ministry. They themselves also talking, we do need to get to the analytical part. And that's what I'm saying. Again, in terms of a technology, preparing dashboard is one night thing once you have the data. So those are the things. And second thing, NWIC is working with the states, that not only the national dashboard, but then states can have their own dashboard. They can have use this data for operational analytics. In fact, I worked on a different project in West Bengal. This is where they really, as I shared previously with you, using the field data and the remote sensing data, by collecting together, they had developed a very standard planning and design tool online, and working with all the district people. So it has all those things what you're talking, dashboards, operational tools. This is how we had nurtured, and in fact, such things are setting up a great platform to take it forward.
As citizens, we're always used to complaining about what is not working. We very rarely celebrate things like that, right? You made it sound very simple, but I'm assuming an extraordinary amount of effort would have gone into normalizing this data, everyone talking in the same variables, the same language, the same units, so you can look at the larger picture. I feel very proud, to be in a country where we can achieve something like that, given our data sources are so diverse.
I couldn't agree more, Karthik. Frankly, because when we were preparing this is third phase of the project. As I said, since 90s, mid 90s. So as you said, it takes time. It takes persistence. Institute, because it's about changing the institutions, bringing from paper to digital, and then bringing to open data. So again, I congratulate Ministry of Jal Shakti for having this data dissemination policy in 2012 when they opened up the data, when they brought this data. They have been trying to bring the data all in public, and coming to the on the one system, as we are saying. So that way, indeed, it is a big effort from all top to down, and ministry, because not only from the center point of view, they are supporting financially also. This in this project, it's 100% grant going to the states. So this is where the vision of the central is coming. That let's work together. This is what I think I call one water data, one platform, or one in. As for GST and all we were saying, so one country, one water data. So this is a vision coming from the ministry.
What an extraordinary jugalbandi this is between the center and states. Very proud of this. Moving slightly away from data, in this show, we've been talking about the water challenge, the scarcity that we're looking at, and more importantly, water wastage, right? In your opinion, what is the biggest reason for water wastage? And what do you think, can be made better by citizens, by municipalities, or by states for that matter?
Thank you. So you're right. System, of course, is operated or used by, of course, developed by the state or municipalities, and users are the end users. So when we look at if we compartmentalize the losses, 50% of the losses are through users. Whether I come from irrigation sector, but even from the drinking and all, it's very clear. And I think we all know how much we waste the water. So once it is from the outlet, 50%, of course, we are one of those culprits. But in terms of a transmission system also, so rest of the 50%, of course, we can say into this transmission and conveyance system. Which of course belongs to municipalities or the government system.
Sorry to interrupt your flow, but how do you mean when you say in transit water is wasted?
Let us say the municipality water is coming from the storage through the pipes and through the outlet. So it's tertiary system, what I'm calling. And then of course, it comes to our tap. So once we are taking off the meter, this is where frankly, 50% water is getting lost here. Tertiary system, basically, I meant just before we are taking that water, that system.
Right. On the way from the source to, our houses and apartments.
Up to the house. So last mile. Yeah. So that's where 50% water, I could say, and 50% is us. And for that, we need two different approaches, if I could think of. One is when it is to the user. I would give example of my Fitbit. If I'm monitoring, I will manage it. So this is because if I have completed my 9,000, I will try to complete my another 1,000 steps, thinking, okay, let me reach my milestone. So same way, if we make users at least monitor. I know sometimes we say you have to price the water, but I would say value the water. So that requires again awareness among the citizens. And I must say, even I'm talking to my mom, but even as a water specialist, I have not been able to, very successful. So this is, these are, required how exactly, we really need to make big efforts to convince ourselves how should we be saving the water. And coming to the system, I think it's pretty well known. We construct and we forget. Operation and maintenance becomes a big issue for any system, and it's not a water system, any system. This is where in some cases now we are coming with a hybrid model so that the agency is like we can see for our again transport department, as we our highways and all. So how we have kind of made it like a service oriented. So same way, I'm not saying that is the solution, because we know water has a different kind of essential services, comes under essential services, but some sort of the arrangements have to be made so that whosoever is the service provider, whether it's a department or it's a private entity, anybody, they are accountable. This is what we have been working in some of the state projects with the states. How do you transform your systems so that department whosoever, they are made accountable? That's the first thing has to come into play. And there are some examples, again it depended on the leaders within the government system. They made accountable to their engineers. He said, okay, this is the fund you need, I'll give you, but this is the outcome you have to give me. So unless again it comes part of monitoring and accountability. This is how I think I would summarize.
Amazing. I was going to use the Fitbit analogy for what gets measured gets managed, but you sort of stole my thunder. But I totally resonate with you. I think battles with parents are the most difficult to win these days, whether it is water or other things. We spoke about what citizens and municipalities and states can do differently. You just explained that. I'm just curious, are there any great examples in India of local bodies making great strides, making a difference in terms of better water management, using what data is available? Are there great examples of that?
There are, undoubtedly. Again, as I said, I come from irrigation sector, so I could share many examples, because I'm sure World Bank is known for community-based management. It means we have been working what you call participatory irrigation management. Of course, this is where it came through the World Bank engagement in the country. And so be it a major irrigation system, or in the tanks, or in the groundwater. In the groundwater, of course, there have been other players, FAO and others, who really came, who introduced starting in South, and now we know several civil societies are working with the users in order to monitor their groundwater and then bring those awareness in different communities. For the tanks, we have had projects in several states, and they are clearly called community-based, kind of a tank water management. So, but I must admit, again, it's not easy, and the success rate is very low. But there are few champions. I visited some of the what we call water user groups and all for the tanks and all, even in several states. Some of them have been working for decades successfully. It's again, of course, credit goes to the leadership. Credit goes to, as we talked earlier, awareness. So I think they could see the benefit, and there are few champions, but I could say frankly hardly 2% or 1%. So scaling up always have been the challenge, because bringing community to one platform, and then again introducing this transparency, how much water we have in our system, how should we be using. And so even without us, sometimes I have seen some communities had this. In fact, I could easily say in Tamil Nadu, I visited one tanks, they had from the history. So they had a clear formula that if the water in the tank is this much, this is how so clearly for the water distribution system, I was really impressed. It was out of my imagination how they were using that even among themselves for the farmers. How will they share, and how they have given a consideration to even transmission losses, which I told you earlier. So the way they were working, that downstream farmer or the tail end farmer will do the cultivation, shared cultivation with the upper end farmer. So this is the kind of a practice they had, so that they could save the water. So, but of course, I can only name one such kind of a people. So, which I've seen one only, but I'm sure there might be others because those water bodies have existed for 1,000 years there. So this is how the system, as I said, scaling up is the challenge, but there are champions.
That's a fascinating example you just gave, in TN. So it seems almost like all the stakeholders are working together. You mentioned how they're looking at the levels of water, and then how the downstream farmer as well as the farmer at the top are working together. But who's coordinating all of this? Is it the local body who's coordinating this?
Local body. I mean, so they always make like committee, and there are leaders, so that water user group has the leader. But this culture, see, sometimes because we have seen many of the groups actually are because of good leaders. But in this particular village, I guess it has been working for decades. So it's not the leader, it's the system which has now come into play. So I guess it has become a habit irrespective of who the leader is. So this is I think I would say system and the leader, that makes two of them. So
brilliant. So they've taken the human interpretation of this out of the equation. It's a process which will work with or without any one individual. Extraordinary example. Since we're talking about leaders and what you can do individually, we usually end the episode by asking our expert guests, what is that one thing, that you would want someone who's listening to this episode, to do, right? In this case, what is the advice that you would give to someone who's listening to manage their water better, especially from a data perspective?
I think as we talked, what you can't measure, you can manage. So this is, of course, we all know. But I think I would like to add one more thing, analytics. So this is, as you also clearly asked, how should we go about the dashboards and all? So that monitoring, so I would say manage and monitor and bring analytics into play. The other message I would like to leave to our data generators, because they think data is the power, but they will get more power by opening up. So this is, I think, would be my request to the data generators. Let's open up. Let us, multiply this data power into a great opportunity not for the country, but for the world. So this is how I think, and save the water.
And from an individual perspective, right? I can understand analysts listening to the show, who really value what you just said. But regular people like me, if they're listening to this episode, what is that one action point that they can do?
So I think one thing we have been visioning. Now I'll come to my Fitbit. I guess we all need to own our system, my well, my river, my command area, or my municipality. So if I bring monitoring and this manage by monitoring the health of my system or benchmarking my system, so this I'm sure will, kind of take us to the next level. And I know we are all come from a competitive system. So I'm seeing we have a state ranking system, and I can see how, conscious they are. What is my rank this month? So same way, if you could start ranking the systems, I know Niti Aayog has started ranking the states based on, their different performance. So this is how we could start ranking health of our system. So this is, I think, would be one of the key takeaway.
I love what you just said. I think, we were speaking about dashboards for a country, etc. But I think individually we can have our own dashboards, isn't it? Yeah. We have access to some data, whatever data we have, we can access, and then measure it in terms of how we are managing water better. Right? Exactly. Wonderful, wonderful advice to whoever is listening to this show. Anju, thank you so much, for your time and sharing your expertise with us. And we wish you good luck for all the amazing endeavors you're on.
Thank you, Karthik. It has been great talking to you. And frankly, you have brought many ideas to me while I'm talking to you. So thanks again.
Thank you so much. Very happy to hear that. Thank you.
Hello. It's been another great week on the IVM Podcast Network. On The Habit Coach, author Aparna Piramal Raje shares with Ashton 7 mental health therapies. The Simplified Gang discuss the Tata Group's recently released Super App. On A Sip of Finance, Priyanka explains how inflation affects our households. On Tedhe Mede Raste's 100th episode, Keshav takes us to Amritsar's beautiful Golden Temple. Keshav, congrats for the 100 episodes. Wow, that's a whole 100 episodes. Check them all out. And on Smarter with Sid, Siddharth sheds light on why Netflix lost over 200,000 subscribers in the first quarter of this year, 2022. And on Smarter with Sid, Siddharth sheds light on why Netflix lost over 200,000 subscribers in the first quarter of 2022. Do follow us on social media. We are IVM Podcasts on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And remember, if you're enjoying this show or any of our other shows for that matter, do tell a friend. It really helps us out a lot. Also, don't forget to rate us on any platforms you're listening on, and you can also check us out on YouTube. We are also doing a small listener survey to better understand how you respond to our shows and advertising on the network. We would really appreciate it if you could spare a few minutes to fill it. It helps us build better shows for you. And finally, we would like to thank our sponsors this week, SBI Life Insurance, India Water Portal, and Jupiter, a digital banking app.
Namaste, this is Cyrus Brocha. I am part of the government cancel culture program to remove rubbish off all the different streams available. So what we have is all the collected rubbish we put together on our show. It's called Cyrus Says. It's on IVM Podcasts. You have to watch it and listen to it. It's on our app. It's on our website. It's on the YouTube channel. It's on Facebook. There are many different ways. Don't bother me and ask me how. You have to find out. We talk to different personalities. Many of them are known. Some are just people we meet downstairs and invite them up for chai. But the point is, it's fun and it's very therapeutic. So please join in and listen to Cyrus Says.